welcome to the class. It's Good Friday, and today is normally a big holiday for everybody in Ireland and a lot of Europe. So I hope you have a good day. And today we will continue with a free class. We will probably be quicker than the other days, and we will try to cover some content as well. So the structure will be very similar. We will begin with the terms, the introduction document to explain the grammar concepts first. After the grammar concepts, we will continue to the phrasal verb list. That's the plan for today, and I think that will be the majority of the class, and possibly some idioms. But they're the three areas that we will begin. I hope that you have a good morning, that you had a good morning, and happy Friday. It's a holiday weekend, so I hope that you have a great weekend. This morning, we have just finished a free class in speaking. We had a speaking session this morning at 9 o'clock, and it was good. And it's open, and you are welcome to join the speaking class every morning if you want, Monday to Saturday, 9 o'clock in the morning. There is a speaking session. You can see the information here. It's on Zoom, and the link for the WhatsApp group is on the Facebook page. You can connect to the WhatsApp group and book and reserve your place. That's a possibility. And always in the afternoons, we have a webinar at 4 p.m. Today, I am not sure. I think it depends. If we have a lot of people that want to attend the webinar today, contact me. If not, there's a possibility we will postpone the class today because of the holiday. But if you're interested, contact me. But the probability is we will probably postpone the class today, the webinar, because it's the holiday. But that's the plan. So I see we are functioning and we are live. So I'll just lower this, and that's it. So that's the schedule for next week. Probably will be very similar. The structure for next week will be very similar. We have the speaking class in the morning at 9 o'clock, followed by the free class at 11:15, and then specific webinars every day next week as well. So that's the plan. I think you are familiar with this. If today is your first day, welcome to the free class. Thank you for connecting, and hello to everybody who normally attends. And I hope you enjoy. I hope we have no problem with the connection. I hope we have no problem with the Wi-Fi and the connection, the technology. And also we have family working from home, and it's the holiday, so hopefully no big disruption or distraction is a possibility. Okay, so let's begin. So I will share my screen, and you can see my first document will be the introduction document here. So this document is very, very important. And again, maybe you are familiar with this document, but I'll just briefly introduce the important vocabulary, and maybe this is new for you, but the majority of people, I think, are very, very familiar with this document. So I'll just explain very, very briefly. There are three sections, in my opinion, of English. We have the use of English is the first section. That's very important. Okay, the second section are the tenses and the different times in English. When we speak, you need to be very familiar with the different tenses and very confident and very sure about the different tenses in English. And finally, we have the other grammar concepts and the other grammar terms. And again, when you learn English, it's necessary that you are familiar, absolutely familiar with the terms and the expressions and the concepts in grammar. That's the first step. It's very important. If you are a beginner, it's important. If you are intermediate, it's important. And if you are an expert and proficient, it still is important to refresh and to be familiar with the terms. Okay, so my idea today at the beginning is just to show you the terms, and so you are aware and conscious of the important vocabulary and terms, because during the class I use the technical vocabulary frequently. For example, accents. In English, we have a lot of different accents. In Ireland, we have a particular accent. It's possible. Some people have a strong accent. Some people have a general accent. Some people speak very quickly. This is the same in every part of the world. The United States have very particular accents. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, England, Scotland, Wales, and all English-speaking countries have different accents, and that's very hard, and that's a big part of English. For me, it's possible the U is very strong for me. Dublin, butter, and phonetically in the book, maybe it's Dublin, butter. So just be careful with the pronunciation in Ireland of you. Also the TH. For example, phonetically, it should be this, that, these, those. But sometimes in Dublin and sometimes for me, it's like a D, this, that, these. So that's just a little example of different accents and different pronunciation in different parts of English speaking countries. The next topic are phrasal verbs. So phrasal verbs are very unique and very particular to English. They are a specific area. We have thousands of phrasal verbs and we use them all the time in conversation, informal situations. So with my family, with my friends, I use phrasal verbs all the time. In formal situations, in serious situations, we use phrasal verbs also. The concept of the phrasal verb is the verb plus a preposition combined, and it's possible a literal, exact significance, but it's also possible a second, completely different significance. And this is the importance of the phrasal verbs. They are really, really important. They are very frequent and they are a big part of English. You can see a little list here, a little example, but we have thousands of phrasal verbs. And today I am looking at a document from the internet. So online, there are a lot of documents available for phrasal verbs and you can find a lot of material, and I recommend you are very comfortable and very confident and very sure of phrasal verbs. If you are comfortable, you will understand English a lot better, particularly with this area. The other area in use of English are idioms. So idioms are like expressions, and we use expressions all the time in every situation, social situations, formal situations. Idioms are like expressions to make English more entertaining, to make English funnier, to make English more interesting. So idioms are very creative and they are a big part of English and they're very typical in conversation, and you need to be familiar with all the expressions to really understand English as well. So for me, those two, phrasal verbs and idioms, are the most important areas. Of course, conversation is important when you practice English, when you learn English. It's necessary for you to continuously practice conversation, and this is important. Hopefully, somebody can correct you in your conversation, and pronunciation is important. We have some irregular sounds, irregular pronunciations in English, and during the class, I try to identify and try to help you with the pronunciation. So that's a very important area. So for me, that area in total, the use of English is a massive area and very, very important to learn English and when you are practicing and learning and studying. Okay. The next area are the tenses. The next section is in relation to tenses. So we have a few concepts in relation to different times. When you speak in a language, you need to be aware. Do you speak in the present? Is the action in the present? Is it in the past? Is it in the future? In English, we have the present simple, we have the past simple, and we have the future simple. The past simple is sometimes very complicated because we have a lot of irregular verbs in the past simple, and that's difficult. And to create the future, it's normally will. I will go, you will have, you will eat. So that's the future simple, present simple, past simple. The next idea is the continuous, present continuous, one action happening continuously. In the present, I am speaking. The past continuous, I was speaking. And the future continuous, I will be speaking. So that's the simple and the continuous. And the next idea is the perfect. So we have the present perfect. The construction is the subject, the auxiliary verb, and the participle. So that's technical, but basically that's the present perfect. Usually it's the period or the action in the past it's finished, but the consequences are related and relevant to the present. One example, I have eaten my breakfast. It's finished. It started in the past, but it is related to the present because at the moment I am not hungry because the food is still with me. So I have eaten my breakfast is the present perfect. The past perfect is similar, except the auxiliary have goes to the past. I had eaten my breakfast, and normally we use the past perfect before another action in the past simple. Okay, I had eaten my breakfast before my friend contacted me. Okay, so that's the present perfect and past perfect. We also have the future perfect, and we have more advanced structures: present perfect continuous, past perfect continuous. Okay, so it's a little more advanced, but you need to be familiar with all the concepts of the simple, continuous, and perfect. The next idea is the infinitive. The infinitive is the base of the verb, the foundation of the verb, and normally it's to go, to eat, to drink, to have. This is the infinitive. And when I mention in the class the infinitive, this is what I refer to go, to eat, to have, to drink, infinitive. After the infinitive, we have the conditionals. In the theory, in the book, it's very, very heavy. It's a big area to study the conditionals. It's very tricky. In the book, we have the 0, first, second, third mixed conditionals. Very, very difficult area with rules. But in my opinion, in reality, in conversation, it's less strict, it's more flexible, and it's more fluid. And basically, it depends on if and the different tense. Okay, so for example, if it rains today, I will not go to the city centre. If I win the lottery, I would buy a house. Okay, so it's basically related to if, and this is the area of the conditionals. The next important and final probably area in relation to tenses are the active and the passive. So the active is the typical structure: active, subject, verb, object. I drink water. That's the typical structure in English. That's called the active. And the typical creation of the passive, we just change the position of the subject and the object. So the water, introduce extra verb to be, is the participle of the original verb drunk by me. So I drink the water is the active. The water is drunk by me. That's the passive, and that's very important. Okay. So they are the most important concepts and the most important technical terms in relation to tenses. And also we saw use of English. Finally, we have important vocabulary in relation to grammar. Okay, so we have the noun, and a noun is a person, a place, or a thing. We have a lot of nouns, and every noun or substantive needs an article. We have two articles, a or the. Okay, house is the noun, a house in general, or the house. So the definite or indefinite article with the noun, and the majority of nouns you can use an adjective. Okay, so the function of the adjective is to describe the noun, and the position of the adjective is normally before the noun. Okay, so house, the big house. Okay, so the position of the adjective is before the noun. That's important. The next idea is of the adverb. So the function of the adverb is to describe the verb. We, of course, we have a lot of verbs: to drink, to go, to walk, to talk. They are the typical verbs. And we have a lot of adverbs. Typically, they end with ly. Quickly, slowly, happily, rapidly. Typical adverbs. And the function is to describe the verb. Talk slowly, run quickly. Okay, so the adverb is typically after the verb, and that's very important. We also have the idea with the adjective of the comparative and the superlative. Big, this house is big. This house is bigger than this house, but this house is the biggest. That's the comparative and the superlative, and that area is important. Modal verbs. In English, we have a particular area and category of verbs called modal verbs. Can, could, may, might, should, ought to, must. They're the typical collection of modal verbs, and they are related to ability, permission, possibility, options, recommendations, advice, and obligation. So the 7 areas, more or less, that we use modal verbs. Ability is can. I can run 10 kilometers. It's my ability. I can contact my friend. It's permission and ability. Could, may, and might are very, very similar. They are for possibilities and options. I could go to the city centre. It's a possibility. It's an option. I may go to the city centre. I might go to the city centre. May and might are probably a little more formal and a little more polite, but could is maybe more general, but they are very similar. Shall is basically similar to will, and it's the question: shall we go to the park? Shall we enter the room? It means will we go to the park? Will we enter the room? So it's old, it's maybe formal, but it's very important. Should is typical for recommendation and advice. So in the situation for advice, you advise your friend, okay, and you need to be careful because the verb is to advise with the S, and the noun is advice. So there's a difference between the verb and the noun. So the verb has the S. You advise your friend, but you give advice. Okay, so that's a little different. And in the situation for advice, we typically use the verb should. So my advice to you, you should visit this park, you should watch this movie. And we have a little more formal verb, ought to. The pronunciation is a little difficult because the G is silent, but the significance is exactly the same. You ought to visit this park. You ought to contact your friend has the significance you should. Okay, really good. And finally, the last modal verb that is important is must. It's for obligation. You have no choice. You must collect the food. You must go to the shop. It's an obligation and you have no choice. The big rule with the modal verb, okay, so there's a big rule with the modal verb and it's common and it's important. So the modal verb is typically before another verb and the next verb we eliminate to. So normally the verb is the infinitive, to go, to eat, to have, to drink. But when you have the modal before, the rule is it's necessary to eliminate to. Can, go, might, have, should, look. That's correct, correct, correct. The error, the typical error is can to have, should to go. That's the error because it's necessary to eliminate to. That's important for the modals and the confusion and the error is very frequent. Excuse me. The next section are prepositions. We have approximately 150 prepositions. They are little small words and they can change the meaning and the significance of the sentence completely. They are related to direction, they are related to movement, and they are related to position, prepositions. Okay. Also, we use prepositions in relation to phrasal verbs. Remember the combination of the verb and a preposition has a second significance. They are phrasal verbs, but also in general for prepositions we use for direction, for movement and position. For example, speak. I speak in general, but direction, I speak to you. I speak to my friend. Look, again, I look in general, but I look at the television. So prepositions are very important for direction, also for movement. Okay, so I run across the road, I run under the bridge. So for movement, direction, and position. So the ring is on my finger, the ring is in my hand, under my hand, over my hand, and they are very important. We have a lot of prepositions. They are very big. They have big importance in English, and they're very small, but they can confuse and change the significance completely. The next section is important. So we have technically possessive adjective, possessive pronoun, object pronoun. Those three areas are very important. In reality, the significance is my football. This is my football, your football, his football, her football. That's the possessive adjective because it's before the noun football, possessive adjective. My car, your car, his car, her car. That's the first one. The second one is the possessive pronoun, which means it's after. So the car is mine, the car is yours, the car is his, the car is hers, the car is ours. So you need to be very, very clear with that. And finally, the object pronoun, I give the car to you, I give the car to him, I give the car to her. You have to be very clear, particularly in relation to him, her, his, and hers. Okay, so that area sometimes is confused and it's frequently mixed. So you need to be very clear when you're speaking English for the three different areas here. The difference between this, that, these, and those is very important, and also the pronunciation. In Dublin, sometimes for me, it's like this, that, these, those, but phonetically in the book, you will see probably this, that, these, and those. So the TH is a little bit important for pronunciation, and that's just one example. Finally, we have a few more. So the difference between another, other, the other, and the others are very important. It's depending on singular, another day, another week, another year, singular, 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 and other is for plural. Other weeks, other years, other people, other days. So that difference is very, very important. And also when you have a choice, do you want this coffee or do you want the other coffee? When you have a choice of two things, it's typical to say not this one, but the other. And finally, the others is related to a group of people. So we go to the party. Do you want to go to the party with us or do you want to go to the party with the others? So it's important. Questions, how to create the questions is a big area for English, and that's a difficult topic, and one day in the grammar webinar, I will explain the significance and the importance to create questions. Suffixes and prefixes is a very big area, and I always say it's very important because in English we have little combinations of letters at the end of a word, which is technically called a suffix, and we have little letters at the beginning of the word, which are called prefixes, and they are a great indicator of the form of the word. Is the word a verb? Is it an adjective? Is it a noun? Is it an adverb? So the prefix and the suffix is a big support, a big indicator, a big help for you to know the correct form of the word. Okay, so I really think that's a big area. During the class, I try to identify the suffixes because many people mix and confuse the noun and the adjective, and that's important. Okay. Linkers and conjunctions. We have a lot of linkers in English, and linkers play a big role. They play a big part to make English more cohesive and to make English more fluid. And basically, they connect two sentences or two clauses or two phrases. They connect. And we have simple linkers and we have more advanced linkers. For example, and, but, and then we can continue to maybe however, moreover, furthermore, as well as that. So linkers are very nice. They need to be used appropriately, but they are a big part of English, and we have a big list of linkers as well. Okay, brilliant. And that's it. So they are the most important terms and technical vocabulary in English. That document is important. It's very similar compared to other books. It's very similar compared to any class. Any teacher will have the same content more or less. So it's necessary for you, if you are learning English, you need to be very clear and you need to understand the concepts in English very, very clearly. Okay, I think in other languages, it's the similar structure that you need to understand. So to learn a language, you need to understand the structures first, for sure. Okay, and this document is good. Writing is an important skill. So writing, listening, speaking, reading, and grammar. They are the 5 areas that are important. Writing, you need to practice. Speaking, you need to practice. Listening, you need to practice. Reading, you need to practice regularly for vocabulary, for grammar. Read, 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 and also study a little grammar. So they're the 5 big areas that are necessary for a language. Okay, exams. Some people prepare exams, and exams are very important for a lot of people. The Cambridge English exams are very popular. You have the B2, you have the B1, you have the KET, the PET, the FCE. You have a lot of exams for Cambridge. The advanced, the proficiency. Also, we have the IELTS exams are very important, and I have specific webinars dedicated to exam preparation every week. So you can find the information on the page. Okay, and you are welcome to attend. Good. So that is the introduction. Remember, okay, now you are welcome. We're going to look at some phrasal verbs. So this page, this document, is a document of phrasal verbs. And you remember in the section use of English, we have accents, phrasal verbs, idioms, conversation, and pronunciation. They're the 4 topics, the 4 areas to focus on a lot in my classes. And this document is a document of phrasal verbs. Okay, so the last day we stopped at the preposition look forward to. Okay, so I'm going to move this here so everybody can see. And the last expression we saw was to look forward to, which is here. And the significance is to anticipate with pleasure. And it's very common in English, very important to look forward to. I'll give you a few examples. Today is Friday, and I am looking forward to the weekend. I'm looking forward to Saturday. I'm looking forward to my holiday. I'm looking forward to my holidays again in June, July. So it means that you're very excited, you're very enthusiastic, and you really cannot wait. Okay, so to look forward to is very important. The next phrasal verb with to look into is typical, and it is literal. So look, no problem. You look. In is the preposition. You look in, and to is the movement. So for example, you have a problem and you work for the company. So you work for the company. The company has a problem. You need to solve the problem, but first you need to look into the problem. So you need to investigate, you need to look into. So the significance to look into a problem is to investigate a problem. Okay, and here it's very, very important. Look on is possible. So the verb to look and maybe look on. So I'll just make this a little bigger, 24 for example. So to look on is not too difficult, but I'll just give you a few examples. Obviously look is the same verb, but you look on. On is typical the preposition for surface. So on the road, on the table, on my hand, on my shoulder. On is typical for surface, but we can say a lot of people on the street, a lot of people are looking on, and that could just mean to observe with no action. So imagine this accident, imagine the situation on the street, and you have the problem, and a lot of people are just observing the problem. It's a perfect situation that people are just looking on. So they're just looking on the situation, they're looking on the moment, and there's no activity, no action, they're just observing. Okay, so to look on, I suppose, is possible to observe, not too difficult. Look over is common, okay, and it's more logical. So again, look is the same verb, and over is the preposition for movement. But this is a situation for school and for a book or a project. So you submit your project, but before you submit your project, you need to look over your project. So it's logical because this is the project and this is the start, this is the finish, and you need to look over. So the significance is to review. You need to check if you have an error, check if you have a mistake. So you need to look over your work. Okay, so to look over your work is to review. And we also have an expression to look over your shoulder, which is a little bit different. Okay, so to look over is literal because this is your shoulder and you need to look over your shoulder because something is at the back. But this is very typical if you are in a dangerous situation and somebody wants to damage you or somebody wants to harm you. Okay, to damage or to harm. So if somebody wants to damage you or to harm you, it's necessary you look over your shoulder. So it's this action. Because you are worried, you are afraid, you need to constantly look over your shoulder because you think somebody will try to attack you. So that's very, very typical to look over your shoulder. To look over is also possible to ignore. So typical with a candidate in an interview, if you go to an interview and you're happy with the interview, you do your best, you believe you are perfect for the job in the interview, but the manager, the company decide to ignore you. They ignore your candidacy. So they ignore you and the company select another person. So this is a perfect literal example. The company look over you. So that means they ignore you and they select somebody else. That's very typical in the context of a job. To look over somebody is to ignore, and literal, but very frequent as well. And there is another verb to overlook, which is more typical. So to overlook a problem, to overlook a situation is maybe to ignore. And it could be to supervise. So there are two little situations to ignore. You overlook the problem, you ignore the problem. So that's a typical example. Imagine the candidate has a very good profile. The candidate is the perfect person for the job, but they have one problem. And this problem is a big problem, but the company decide to overlook the problem and hire and contract the person. So they ignore. That's typical, but in relation to not selecting, that's possible as well. So the company overlook the person, they ignore, they do not select the person, and they select somebody else. But there's another situation with overlook. If you are the manager and the supervisor, you are the supervisor, you are responsible for the job, you are responsible for the work, so you overlook the work, you overlook the people, you observe and you manage and you supervise. So this is a good example of the flexibility of English. Basically, it's the same significance always, to look and over, but in different situations, they can have different significances. And this is a perfect explanation, a perfect example of the flexibility of the verb and the preposition or phrasal verbs. Okay. Similarly, the next one is very good. To look up Number one is literal. So I look up because something is here. So I look up. That's number one. The second significance is to find information in a book. So if I'm looking in a book, imagine the telephone book. You remember the old telephone book with all the names in the book, and you have all the information of the name, telephone, the telephone book. You need to look up the book to identify and to find the person. So we have the phrasal verb to look up the information, to look up the book, and the significance is to search and to find the information. Okay, and here's exactly the explanation and the definition: to search for in a dictionary. So a word, for example, in a language, if you do not understand the word, it's necessary you search for the word in the dictionary. Number one, okay, you search for the word in the dictionary, you look for the word in the dictionary, or you look up the word in the dictionary. Has the significance to search for a word. Typical, common, and important. The second example, with the same fundamentally same explanation, but it's like to locate or to find, exactly the same, except the first example is the book or the dictionary. The second example is in the city with people. So you go to New York, you arrive to New York, and it's very big, and you have one contact in New York, an old friend, and you decide to look up your old friend. That has the significance: you decide to search for your old friend. So you maybe look for your phone, you look in the contact, you send a message. So you look your friend up means you search for his situation or her situation, and you try to contact. And that has the significance here, maybe to locate and to visit. It's very typical in movies when two people say goodbye. I say, okay, I'm going to New York. I will not see you for a long time. If you travel to New York, look me up. That's typical. So if you travel to New York, try to find me, try to contact me. Okay? Very, very good. The next one is very nice. And the significance is look up to. Okay? So I'll just show you the example. To look up to is very typical. So again, look up is direction, and then look up to is movement and direction. So it could be literal, look up to the sky, number one, literal, but we use this as a metaphor for people. So I am the son, I am the young boy, and this is the old man, maybe your grandfather, okay? And you look up to your grandfather. It could be literal, but the metaphor is like respect. Okay, so I look up to my grandfather means I admire and I respect. Okay, to admire and to respect. And we have good vocabulary as well. We say a role model. So this person is a role model. It's an ideal person, and you look up to the person. The same is possible in the negative. We change the preposition. So if one person looks down on another person, it's disrespect. It's the negative. Okay, so if you look down on the person, you think you are superior, you think you are better. So that's a good example of the difference between the admiration, the respect, and the negative disrespect. So to look down on is to disrespect somebody. Okay, so to disrespect a person is to look down on the person. So really good example. And here you can see look up to the person is to respect or to admire. Really flexible. Again, we have a lot of phrasal verbs with look. Look out is again typical. And I think we have seen that. To look out is when it's a dangerous situation. Imagine on the street, two people are on the street and one person decides to cross the road, but the road is very dangerous. You have a lot of cars, and the friend says, look out. Okay, that has the significance: be careful and watch, because you're looking here and your friend says, look out, because something is there. So it's logical, but it's very difficult to be careful. So when you go to New York, look out for the bad restaurants. So be careful and pay attention. Okay, so it's really typical. We have look out, we have look up to, we have look up, we have look on is to observe, we have overlook, and we have lots of prepositions connected with the verb to look. But you have to remember the basic significance is more or less the same: to look and the movement of the preposition. So they're a little flexible, and you need to just be a little adaptable and open-minded with the phrasal verbs. The next list we have is with M, to make, okay, and we have a lot of combinations to make. The first example, I think, when I think of make, is make up, okay, and we have a lot of flexibility with make up. I know the list, we have make out, but first I want to begin with maybe the most typical, to make up, and the first example is for the face, okay. If you cover your face for the party, very typical for the party, when you prepare for the party, you have your clothes for the party, and you have the make up, maquillaje, I think in Espanol, but makeup is in English, so the verb is to make up, and the substantiva or the noun is the makeup, okay. Because really, make your face, this is my face at the moment, but for the party I prepare my face, I put cream on my face, and you fix your hair on the face, you fix your eyes, and you fix the lips. So you construct, or you make your face, and up is significant because maybe you start at the bottom and you go up. So to make up your face has the significance to fix your face completely for the party, and this is the explanation for the product is makeup, okay, because you change, you construct your face. That's the first example. It's literal for the products, the makeup. The second example is to make up with your friend. Similar logic, but you need to be creative. You need to use your imagination. So imagine the friend has a bad relation. You break the relationship, and you're not speaking. You have a bad moment with your friend, but the next day you decide to construct. You decide to make up and to reconstruct the friendship. So you make up with your friend has the significance you repair, you fix, and you solve the problem, okay? So to repair the relation, to fix the relation, so really good vocabulary, arreglar in Espanol, to fix or to repair or to make up with your friend, okay? That's the second typical example with to make up. The third example is typical as well, a completely different context, but again, the same significance really. And we give you an example, to make up a story, okay? And that has the significance that you invent, again, creation. You completely create the story, you invent the story, so it's a synonym to lie, mentir in Espanol, to lie, okay? So typical for the children, the child does not want to go to school, so the child prefers to stay at home. So the child decides to invent a story to the mother and says, oh, mother, I feel very sick, or daddy, I feel very sick, I don't want to go to school. So the child makes up the story, creates the story, and invents the story, okay? Perfect. Really good example of the real phrasal verbs. We have 4 or 5 different contexts, but the significance ultimately is practically the same, but you need to be very flexible and you need to have an open mind to interpret the phrasal verbs, okay? And they are the typical phrasal verbs with the make up. I suppose we have one more, and we say made up of. So this is a typical situation, like lasagna, the food, okay? The food is made up of cheese, pasta, beef, okay? So the story, basically it means it consists of, the direct translation is consists of. So the lasagna consists of beef, cheese, meat, and the significance is lasagna is made up of beef, cheese, meat, okay? So that's a really good example, consists of. And excellent, very common. For example, the exam, you take the exam, and the exam is made up of listening, speaking, writing, and grammar, reading. So the exam is made up of the different parts, the components, and it consists of. Okay, they're the most typical with make up. Only one expression, make up, but there's lots of context. Here we can see make out, okay? And the first one is very typical, and it's like with vision, when you look, okay, and you look at the television and the screen is very bad, it's difficult to see the television, one example. Or on the street, you see the problem on the street, but it's very difficult to see. So it's difficult for you to make, like create or construct, to make out what is happening. So I can see the problem, I can see there's a difficult situation, but it's very difficult to see, and I cannot make out what's happening. I cannot see perfectly what's happening. I do not understand exactly what's happening. And the translation here is to decipher. The pronunciation is difficult, so we say to decipher, which means to understand, really. Okay, so it's very similar to understand. In the university, you go to the lecture in the university and the teacher explains the information, and it's difficult for you to understand, it's difficult for you to see, you cannot make out the problem. So very, very typical. That's a bit tricky, but it's very common. The next one is possible in relation to the context of the bank, in relation to the context of money, in relation to the context of the check. Okay, a check, number one, is the piece of paper in the bank. So when you have your bank account, you have the book, you have a special book with it's a check book. Okay, I think in the United States they say this word, they write this word, and in the United Kingdom they maybe say check, but the pronunciation is exactly the same. And you can say a check book is the book you have from the bank, and you can write to pay for the electricity, to pay for the car, to pay for the holiday. You write a check. It's the piece of paper. Okay, so in that context we say who, quien, who do I make the check out to? So in that context for the bank, we make, or I make the check out to John. Okay, so it's very, very specific, but it's logical, because make is like the activity to construct or to do. So you make the check, you create the check out, because normally the money is in for you, and you pay out, pay in, pay out. So who do I make the check out to? Almost impossible. When we speak very, very quickly, it's almost impossible to catch. Very, very difficult to catch and understand, because we speak so quickly, but it's extremely natural for us, extremely normal. And to make the check out to is the typical situation. So you make the check out to John. That means you write the name to John. Okay, and there's the explanation: to write a document or other documents. Okay, so that's M. And now let's continue to the next example: to make out, to succeed. Not typical in my situation, but the verb to succeed is very important. Okay, so the verb to succeed is a really important verb. It's related to success. Okay, so the noun is success, and I think in Espanol it's éxito, and the adjective is successful, which is exitoso. Okay, so this is a perfect example of the noun, verb, adjective, and suffix. So you need to be very clear with the detail and the suffixes in English. So to succeed is the significance to have success. And remember, the noun in English, normally we use the verb to have with the noun: to have time, to have energy, to have luck, to have success. And with the adjective successful, we usually use the verb to be. So to be lucky and to have luck, to have success and to be successful. This is classic, it's basic, but it's incredible the number of people that forget this rule. It's so important. So generally to be is with the adjective, and to have is with the noun. Okay, and I'll give you a few examples. I'll put them here. So we say to have luck, but to be lucky. So this is so important. It's very simple, but it is incredible the number of times people make this error. Okay, so the adjective is typically to be lucky, and the noun is typically to have luck. And here it's the same. So we say to have success and to be successful. But here they say to make out is possible as success. No, from and I'm looking at this example, and it's not typical for me. Excuse my facials, but this is not a typical example. So the example is he really made out in the not really, maybe more in the United States, but I'd never hear this in the United States. The next one is to progress, and let's see the example. How is your son making out in his new job? Again, not typical. So these two examples are maybe very typical in America. In Ireland, we never hear this, and in the United Kingdom, I think we never hear this structure, but maybe in the United States, possibly. But again, I have in movies and from America, I have never heard this. So he really made out in the stock market last year. Of course, you can understand maybe the context that he was good, or how is your son making out in his new job? Again, you can understand the context, but not typical, not classic. Okay. Yes, the next one is classic around the world. Okay. So we continue with to make out, and this is possible, and this is very typical and very common in England, in Ireland, in the United States, and the significance is here to kiss, como besar, and probably but it's just basically to kiss, and to, when in the couple, in a romantic situation, if the couple start kissing and start hugging, that's the situation to make out. Okay, so I don't understand the logic, but we do say to make out. So the two people are making out, and that means they are kissing, they are hugging, they are very happy, of course. So I'll show you the example here for the text. I saw is the verb to see in the past simple. I saw Benno is maybe the person, and Isabel is another person, making out in the movie theater last night. So I saw them kissing. That's really typical. And the next one is exactly the same, but the difference is just with. There's no big problem. So when you say with, you typically have the next person. So this person is making out with this person. No problem. Okay. Here, we can see makeup, and these are the four examples I told you. Cosmetics, number one, to repair or to fix the friendship, to consist of, the exam is made up of four parts, and to lie or to invent. So these four we have spoken already, but this one is good. Okay, makeover is very typical, and the preposition is over. Okay, and it could have two possibilities. Okay, it could be, remember, to look over. If you look over, you review, because you need to check again and again. To look over is to review, but to make over is to do again. So for example, the project, you complete the project, start, finish, you complete the project, but you discover it's necessary to do the project again. So for this situation, you need to start over, and that's the significance of the movement over, from finish to start. So you're finished, but you decide to start over, which means to start again or to make over. Okay, so you can say to start over or to make over. And of course, we say game over when you finish the PlayStation, you play Call of Duty or you play FIFA, and the game is over. It's logical because normally the start is here and the finish is here. Game over, no more. Okay, but to make over has a significance to do again, hacer de nuevo, but it's very typical in the house. So this room, it's a very nice room. I'm very happy with the room. It's very good, but I decide to make over the room, which means maybe to completely change the room. So a makeover is the significance when you completely change something. So this room needs a makeover. It needs a complete reconstruction, a complete renovation, a complete refurbishment. So we have a lot of vocabulary. Reconstruction, reconstruction, refurbishment. Okay, so I'll just change the spelling. Reconstruction and yeah, okay, reconstruction, refurbishment, and makeover, or renovation. Okay, those vocabularies, those words are very common for to make over and very important. Okay, so a makeover is possible for a room, but it's possible for the person. I need a makeover has the significance I need to change my hair, I need to fix my clothes, I need to change my style. You need to have a makeover or do a makeover. Okay, so really good. And they are the most typical with make. You can see all the explanations with make. And let's continue with the verb to mix. Okay, the verb to mix is como mezclar. and it's typical with food. You mix tomatoes with onions, you mix, okay? But we have a phrasal verb to mix up, and this is probably the most typical phrasal verb to mix. Okay, so to mix up. Up, of course, is logical, and it could be literal. So the tomatoes and the onions you mix, but you mix up maybe just means in total or all, okay? But it's more typical, number one, in the, for example, the disco. You go to the disco with your jacket, and normally when you enter the disco, you leave your jacket in the cloakroom. So very, very difficult vocabulary. The cloakroom is the place for your cloak. And your cloak is a very old word in English. And typically the priest or the monk, you know, the monja, the monk has the cloak. And cloak is a synonym. Well, it's not typical, but cloak has a significance for your jacket. So the cloak room is the room where you put your jacket. Okay, and you go to the cloak room, you give your jacket, they give you a ticket. And at the end of the night, everybody's happy, everybody had a great time, you're chatting, and you return your ticket, and they give you a different jacket. Okay, so this in the substantivo is a mix up. Okay, it's a mix up, it's a confusion. So a mix up is a confusion. So the verb is to mix up. They mixed up my jacket, or there is a mix up, substantivo. So very important, there is a confusion. Very typical, a mix up, because we have a lot of confusions all the time in every situations. So if you say there is a mix up, there is a problem, there is a confusion, okay? And here's the two examples. So the first one is to confuse, and the second one is to blend. And blend is a very important verb. Maybe you recognize the word blender, okay? So maybe you recognize the word a blender. So the verb to blend is to mix, but it's very typical in food. When you prepare food, to make a smoothie and a fruit smoothie, okay, you know you have all the fruit and you have the machine to mix the fruit. This machine is a blender, because the verb to blend is to mix, okay, and really, really common. But also we have another phrasal verb with to blend. We say to blend in, and this is very, very, very typical. And one example typical with blend in, for example, the football match. You support Atletico Madrid, but you enter the stadium and everybody in the stadium is with Real Madrid. So everybody in the stadium has the white t-shirt, the white jersey. Real Madrid have the white jersey in the stadium, and you support Atletico Madrid, and you have your red jersey. So it's a problem, okay, a big problem, because if you enter the stadium, the people will be very angry, and the people will, they will shout. So you decide you want to be the same color as the other people, because you want to mix in. So we say in that situation, you want to blend in with the group, you want to blend in with the stadium. So you decide to remove your red t-shirt and wear your white t-shirt. So to blend in is similar to fit in, okay? Basically, nobody will notice your problem. Nobody will notice the difference. So typically when you enter school and everybody's different, but you want to be the same as everybody, so you try, intentar, you try to blend in, okay? Very, very common, very typical. And here, to mix up is the confusion. And, well, no, sorry, the first one is the confusion, but the second one is with the food. So you mix up the tomatoes and the onions. So you mix, you blend. And as I said, the example to blend in is very important as well. The final example is very informal, okay? So to mix things up is a little informal, very typical in conversation with friends, very typical. For example, your group of friends, normally every Saturday night you go to the party, to the same disco every Saturday normally. Routine, you're very happy, it's a brilliant disco, fantastic, the music's fantastic, everything is cheap. Normally you go to the same disco, but next week you decide to change. So this is perfect, you decide to mix things up. So you decide to change your routine. So the significance really is to change your routine. And the example they say here is to make lively is the adjective, to make more life, to make lively a party, and that's possible because the party is very typical. The music is the same. Imagine you go to the party, 8 o'clock, the same music, 9 o'clock, the same music, 10 o'clock, the same type of music, but at 11 o'clock, the DJ decides to mix things up. So he changes the style of music completely from reggaeton to pop. So to mix things up is informal, to maybe change things completely. Okay, good. So I think that's perfect. I think that's really good vocabulary. I think it's really good explanation. They are very, very typical expressions, extremely common in conversation. Probably today with my family, probably today on the television, probably today with my friends. I am sure one of a phrasal verb will appear at least today. They are a big part of English. They are very common and they are very important. And I recommend absolutely that you are very, very familiar with phrasal verbs. Okay, good. Finally, I think we're almost near the end. But remember, with social media, if you want to connect with my accounts on social media, I have the Instagram account @miglioreinglés. I also have the YouTube account @miglioreinglés English classes. You can find the material. I also have the Twitter account. Okay, so there are 3 accounts for the social media. In relation to my work, everything is free, particularly the class at 11:15. Everything is free. I'm very happy to teach for free. It's a good opportunity for me to promote my work, to meet new people, to grow my business. That's a very good opportunity. For you, it's a very good opportunity to learn for free with the internet. Hopefully, you understand me. Hopefully, you understand the class. Fantastic. And I'm very happy to teach for free, especially to people who maybe cannot afford to pay a teacher, who cannot afford to pay a school. So this is the real purpose and intention of the project at the moment. Of course, because of the pandemic, a lot of changes in your work, in my work, and this is the reason I give the free classes, because finally my intention is to reconstruct and to rebuild after the pandemic. Everything is free. It's my job. If you want to support me, if you're very happy with the content, if you're happy with the material and you want to support me, it would be very good for me. There is a possibility to donate. You can make a small donation or a small tip to me by bank transfer. The details are here for the bank transfer. You have the IBAN and the BIC. Number 1, a small donation of maybe €1 or €2. Second, we have Bizum, which is very popular in Spain. You have the application and the telephone number with Bizum. It's very easy to do. And the third possibility in Ireland and other countries is the application Revolut, and you can make a small donation or a small contribution with Revolut, especially after March. March is finished. We had a very good month, a lot of free classes, a lot of material, and now we begin April. Okay, so I'm very happy to teach, and if you want to help me, if you want to leave a tip, these are the options to do so. Okay, and finally, PayPal is possible, but there's a little commission for PayPal, so maybe the bank is better. Okay, I think that's more or less everything. Remember, today we possibly will postpone the webinar at 4 o'clock. If you really want, you can contact me, but I think the plan maybe is to postpone the webinar today at 4 o'clock because of the holiday. It's a very important holiday and everything is quiet and people are relaxing and enjoying the break. So I hope you are the same. I hope you will enjoy the holiday. I hope you will enjoy the weekend. And I think that is everything. Of course, we have more material. We have the phrasal verbs, we have the idioms, but maybe it's an opportunity to speak. If you want to practice your speaking, now you are welcome to join the Zoom call. So I am using Zoom at the moment, and now for 5 minutes, you are welcome to practice your speaking. This is the code and the ID, and you are very welcome to join. I just want to check we are still live because sometimes the internet disconnects very frequently. So I think we are live still, which is great. So yeah, you are welcome to join the meeting if you want to practice your speaking for 5 or 10 minutes. This is the ID and the code, and that could be fantastic. But apart from that, maybe you've no time and that could be the end of the class. So again, thank you so much for this week. Thank you for watching. Tomorrow we continue. Tomorrow we have the speaking session in the morning at 9 o'clock tomorrow. You are welcome to participate in the speaking session, speaking group tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. You can join the WhatsApp group. On the Facebook page, there's the WhatsApp group. You can connect and you can reserve and book your place. And that will be tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Tomorrow, I will continue with the free English class at 11, and probably the webinar tomorrow at 1 o'clock, I think, will be for the B2, for the first certificate. So I just need to confirm and to confirm before tomorrow. Okay. So thank you so much, everybody. I think we are finished. It's a very good class, and